Victoria Rumble Room, the program that pokes and prods at the issues in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, and sometimes even further afield. You just never know. I'm Robin Adair, and joining me across the city in a padded cell is the Croatian sensation of the nation. See, I've given him a new title, John. It's not the Order of Canada, but it's not bad.
It's
John, nice to see you.
Oh, fantastic to see you, Robin. I wish we could do this daily, but anyway, we're really getting the word out. I have to say, more than a few people referred to me as the Croatian sensation last week, and I really have to thank you because you yourself are such a soccer aficionado, and you're such a you have deep knowledge and understanding of the sport, and of course know that Croatian superstar Modric was referred to as the Croatian sensation, and now on Google, my name is showing up. Thank you.
Absolutely. You're very welcome.
Thank you so much for that.
Very welcome. Anything I can do to boost you up a little bit, John, it's great, a great opportunity for me. I just want to mention that our special guest coming up is Fred Haynes, who is the mayor of Saanich. And John, you're a Saanich boy. You must be pleased about that. Do you think the Saanich mayor and council are doing a pretty good job?
It's quite something, eh? Like, yes, I am a Saanich resident, and therefore a lot of folks don't get that because I'm involved on the West Shore. I'm involved in, but I live in Saanich and care deeply about my community. And it's forever been the silent gorilla in the room. Saanich is the largest municipality by size and population in Lower Vancouver Island. And what Saanich does impacts everybody else. So how this council operates impacts the whole region. I'm a huge fan of Fred Haynes, and I think they're doing a great job. I'm particularly acute to the fact that I think municipalities need to stay within their municipal lane. I don't think that they need to be, as others are, commenting about worldwide issues. That's our responsibility on the Rumble Room.
I agree. I was thinking that Fred Haynes is showing a lot of innovation. It sort of sounds a little bit like the era of Frank Leonard. Frank Leonard did a lot for coming up with new ideas and innovative ways to put Saanich first. It was the Uptown Mall was really a vision of Frank Leonard. And I see now Fred Haynes grabbing that mantle and moving forward with lots of ideas. And we're going to certainly dig into that deeply in just a few moments' time. But first, let's do a few snappers, a few short snappers.
All right, let's go. Let's rumble. Come on.
Okay, let's rumble. And I think an obvious one, this is the time of the year now where the tents are supposed to come down in the parks. No more 24-hour camping in parks in Victoria, and people are supposed to be going into homeless shelters, or better than that, even just housing for people that's been built by the province or put up by the province, hotels, other accommodations. And John, I'm really worried this is not going to go smoothly, that these people are not easily going to be abandoning those tents and moving anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, this is not an if. This is a for sure. This will not go smoothly. And I have not seen yet any kind of mental health support in any of the hotels that have been purchased by the province to house these unfortunate folks. This is going to be an ongoing issue throughout the summer, and we'll be hearing about it constantly. And I hope that somehow or another, other municipalities, including Saanich, are going to help make this a smoother transition. It's not going to be, Robin. Sorry.
Well, I've got a buddy who lives a block away from the park in James Bay, and he and his wife just bought there a year ago. They love James Bay. They love the neighborhood, but they don't go over to the park very much. And he says he hasn't seen any indication of tents coming down. Now, it may all happen right at the deadline. People will wait to the last possible second to move. But when you hear about some of the disturbances, the police having to get involved, it just doesn't sound like it's going to move very smoothly. And I frankly am very disappointed about this. And I wish we'd taken more proactive action before this. Having a deadline just puts a lot of pressure on a lot of agencies, including the police. And frankly, it makes it tougher on the people in the tents. They're going to have to make these decisions in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
Many of them have barriers. Many of them have other issues going on. This could be a real collision of a lot of problems all at once.
Yeah, we're not close to any kind of proactive solutions. And on the Rumble Room, maybe we can address that through the summer and into the fall.
I think we're going to have to. I think
Yeah.
it's an ongoing issue, and we're definitely going to be looking at that again. Let's talk about another issue before we get Fred Haynes on here, vaccines.
Yeah.
And I've had my vaccine, and I'm pretty excited about it. There's a lot of people still waiting to get their vaccines. But what I'm also reading in the media there's concern about the fact that there's this gap between getting your vaccine and getting your booster shot, and the suggestion somehow if we get our vaccines, generally speaking, in British Columbia by the end of June, the summer somehow still is going to be a cautious time because we haven't had our second dose. And yet I hear from doctors, I hear from people that are experts on vaccines, you get your first dose, you are protected. You are protected from COVID-19. The booster doesn't make you more protected. What it does is it extends the protection, hopefully into next spring. And I don't think the media is getting that message out as strongly as they might. I'd sure like a lot more people to understand, even with one shot, you're doing yourself a great deal of good. You're helping all of us get back to some form of normal by the summer. Let business get back on its feet. Let the restaurants open again. Let a lot of other social activities happen. One shot is okay. We'll get our second booster shot, but it shouldn't be the thing that people are focused on.
You know, Robin, I think that I think the government needs to hire the Rumble Room to handle some of their communications, because so much. Okay, think of 6 or 7 speed trains going on at the same time in the same direction, and each one of them is a different issue around this health crisis. One is around the science of vaccines. It's just ripping. It's ripping, and the science is changing probably hourly, right? Then there's the implementation of the vaccines. In January, it felt like we're never going to get these things. And now 30% or plus of our BC community is vaccinated, and a percent or two daily, pending supply. Then the third one becoming what's happening in the rest of the world. The fourth one becoming what are the social policies around this? And all of this stuff is moving so fast that it is hard to measure and evaluate. But what we can do, which government is not doing, is communicate all this properly. I don't think they are. They need to hire you, Robin. That's what needs to happen.
Well, I just think that Bonnie Henry, she speaks, and some people do listen. The media certainly covers her when she speaks regularly with the Health Minister, Adrian Dix. But even she has expressed this, but I don't think consistently or loud enough that you get your one dose, you are protected. And I think people need to hear that more clearly. And certainly I'll take more comfort when I hear that being more clearly articulated by my friends in the media. I hope you're listening. And let's now turn to our special guest, Mayor of Saanich, Fred Haynes. He has a PhD in diabetes research and was first elected to council back in 2014. Then in 2018, he won a resounding election over Richard Atwell. And that was for the mayor's chair. And he is now the mayor of Saanich, and he's with us today. And joining us in the Victoria Rumble Room is Saanich Mayor Fred Haynes. So great to have you on the show.
Ready to rumble.
That's the attitude we love. We love that, Fred.
That is great.
It seems to me you're making a real mark in office, some rather ambitious plans. In no particular order, let's start with the casino. Everybody likes something sort of controversial to start off with. A casino and hotel development isn't necessarily controversial, although some people maybe think that way. Is it time for Saanich to have a casino? And what are you hearing out in the community already about this?
These are great questions, Robin. Thank you for that. This actually started, as you know, because you do your homework, 5 years ago, 2015, when BCLC, BC Lottery Corp, put out a request for expressions of interest to the 13 municipalities on the South Island. We put our hands up in 2016 with an overwhelming majority vote, recognizing that, of course, there's some controversy around a casino, but there's also a lot of benefits around a casino. And the aim then was to have the opportunity for Saanich residents to be informed and give their feedback to decide. Move forward 5 years. Here we are today. We actually had a letter in March 11th, 2020 from BCLC saying, should we re-engage in that conversation? Because in the meantime, Victoria had said they were interested. BCLC chose Victoria. 4 years later, Victoria decided no. So then we picked the ball up. But 3 days after the letter coming March 11th, the bottom fell out of the planet with COVID. And it's taken us a year to get back on track because we were giving all our energies to giving the service and security of the people of Saanich. Back to the casino. Well, the idea would be a hotel, entertainment, casino complex. Lightly on on the east side of Saanich because there's a market condition with the Elements Casino. The 5 municipalities around the Elements clearly get a benefit. They share in considerable revenue of about 2.6 million between the 5 of them. And they get jobs, they receive jobs, and they receive all the ancillary services. But over and above that, if you look online to the province's list of those who receive gaming grants that are funded through the Lottery Corp of all kinds of gaming experiences, it's considerable in our community, from Habitat for Humanity, right through to sports groups, soccer groups, our place. So there's considerable benefits there, but there are some social questions to discuss. Money laundering, the impacts on those who have a predilection towards gambling addiction. What we do see is right now, Robin, you must know this, during COVID, there's been a spike in online gambling.
I bet.
Gaming in their homes without curated professionals around them. What we're hearing in conversations with the BC Government's Employees Union, who actually are the staff at the Elements Casino, that their members are acutely aware of the wellness of their own work environment for themselves and the wellness of the environment for the people receiving the service, the residents. So we think there is a positive story here. But the question is to make sure the residents of Saanich are fully informed so then we can make that decision. Last night, we were going to have the vote at council, but we got so tied up in some other issues, which I'll tell you about because they're quite rumble-roomish. We delayed this decision now until May the 3rd. What happened last night, we got so embedded in conversations about old growth, protecting the old growth, that's quite topical right now, and a moratorium on wolf hunting. And I have to say, it was a values position. I stood to protect the old growth forests of the island on the data that there's so few of them left and they're a treasure. And the government of the province has a 14-point old growth strategy in place, but they're not implementing it. So we're saying, let's implement that. That was the vote at council. A lot of discussion on that. And secondly, moving in support of Oak Bay and Souk to take the idea of a moratorium on wolf hunting to AVICC, the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities, where it's already lodged there. So we could stand up and say Saanich supports that. So they were sort of value positions. All 3 of these are value positions. We couldn't get to the casino one because we spent so time on debates of these other issues.
So, John, you're a Saanich resident and taxpayer. Is this how you want to see the municipality of Saanich spending their time?
Well, I'm lucky enough that I think I know Fred from a while ago. There's some familiarity, so he wouldn't mind rumbling with me. I have to say, of those 3 issues, I would be concerned about the ones that it's impacting my city, my place where I live. I get that there's positions on the environment and on other aspects of living on Vancouver Island, but
sure.
but why? I mean, with the casino.
Okay.
Let's talk about the casino because that's the one that's going to impact our community and all of the issues that we're facing. How do you reconcile that? Because that's always what Victoria's accused of. Stay in your bubble.
On these 2 matters, I don't disagree with you at all, John. You know that I'm pretty much a fundamental business approach guy. I've made my living with 30 years working in the publishing industry. You have to keep focused on your knitting. However, there are times when you need also to raise your hand. Saanich Council raised their hand on the opioid crisis. the deaths and addictions, and the need for a safe drug supply. We can't control that, but we raised our hand and said to the federal government and to the provincial government, we need action for a safe drug supply. We did the same with policing, the involvement of the police in the mental health process. That should be reduced as much as possible. So these are outside our city mandates, but sometimes it's important to raise our hand. And it takes a minute to send a letter, John. And I think it's important that we do inform higher levels of government of what value positions we have. But back to the knitting, absolutely. Municipal governments need to pay attention to their core business, which is delivering the services for their residents.
Well, on the casino, Fred, couple things.
Yeah.
Give us kind of a potential where this could live. There's up by Mayfair, there's an old bowling alley that doesn't exist anymore, maybe. And secondly, 5-6 years ago, the biggest concern around a casino was the social impact. Oh man, certainly the View World Casino has demonstrated, I think, that potentially that's not as big a problem as we had anticipated. And in fact, I've been there a couple of times, not to gamble, but to go to trade shows. There's so many other things these facilities can foster. What are you hearing about those two issues, where it might be and the social impact of casino in our community?
Great questions. First of all, let's look at the Mayfair Lanes piece. You probably realize that there's a condition on the use of that land, that it has to have over 100,000 square feet of grocery, and then there'll be some apartments on top.
Oh, I did not know that. Oh, well, that scratches that one.
That property is now going out to tender for people to bid on it. It will be there's 3 acres there. It'll be north of $30 million. That's $10 million an acre. This is what I've heard from colliers who have the process in place.
Yeah.
Logistically, it wouldn't work for costs, but also in terms of market protection, it's too close to the Elements Casino, as I understand it. Location-wise, it would be east of Uptown. It would be east of Uptown, as far as we can understand. But that requires to get into the public process, to go out for expressions of interest, which would be handled by BCLC. So I'm pretty sure it will not be on the west side of Saanich from what I see, but that's still to be determined.
Yeah.
We are a corridors and centers type of a city. We're looking for a growth in our corridors and centers. So you can do the math around that. Where are our centers? Where are our corridors? And go and speculate. For me to weigh in at this point as the mayor to pinpoint a couple of locations is fraught with issues, as you.
We're trying to rumble with them, Rob.
Me on this question. Let's look at the social issues, though. Oh, you're absolutely right. And we do identify as councillors that there are social issues to be discussed. And some of our correspondence has identified those of the gambling and the disruption that it can be in if there's addictive habits. But at the end of the day, we have to balance all these things with the additional benefits.
Yes.
Many people in the community enjoy entertainment and gambling. That's a fact of the matter. Those who say no to gambling probably won't go to gambling anyway. And there may be moral or ethical or social reasons to say we shouldn't approve of a casino because of those negative issues. And this is the process we would go through to explore those, John. It's not my job on Rumble Room today to say what the outcome should be. My job as the mayor of Saanich is to bring the opportunity forward.
All I would mention is that the River Rock Casino in Richmond, I mean, lots of people, including myself, regularly went there to see shows and to see concerts and never went to gamble. And then there's other people that would never think to go see a show and just go to gamble.
Yeah.
And you got to give people choices. And I think we're all adults. So this will all be, I'm sure, discussed in great length by Saanich. And we're going to move on here. I just want to mention that just a couple of weeks ago, John Juricic came out very strongly in favor, Mayor, of your move towards slowing traffic on residential streets to 30K.
What a journey.
So we're not going to challenge you on that one. We think that's a good idea. We think it sounds like people in Saanich, generally speaking, aren't pushing back much. I've been watching for letters to the editor, listening for critics, and it seems to me that there's a general feeling in Saanich that it's not a bad idea. So that must be what you're hearing.
Robin, so, it took 2.5 years since I was elected as mayor, writing 380 letters to all the mayors of BC, speaking up at UBCM with my council and other members to help position the narrative so we could move the dial. Because for over 2 decades at the Union of British Columbia Municipalities, this type of motion was routinely defeated. And we went in to see the ministers. We saw the civil servants of MOTI, the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. Finally, they said, yes, you can do a pilot project. Come forward with your pilot project. We did a lot of research, and initially we thought 40K was the sweet spot. But then the missing ingredient historically has been the public will to embrace 30K. What we then found out was that having moved the dial to 40, there was overwhelming support to say, let's go to 30. And I'm just delighted at it. My job now is to get the pilot. We have Oak Bay in, View Royal in, Esquimalt, Victoria and Saanich. Highland is already at 20 and 30. They won't join the pilot, but they're a demonstration model. Sydney's come in. Unfortunately, North Saanich said no. And one of the problems with BC is the variety of the municipalities we deal with. And the provincial governments has to just that, because the rural municipalities traditionally said no. The urban municipalities said, we'd like to think about it. So here we are on the cusp of an amazing pilot project at 30K. I couldn't be more pleased.
Well, and that brings us into a topic that I think is a little more controversial that I really want to hear more about. You may know that both John and I are former chairs of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce, which on an annual basis calls for at least some degree of amalgamation in Greater Victoria. And one of your predecessors, Frank Leonard, was always fiercely against this, even though he himself was a past chair of the chamber. And there hasn't been a big move towards amalgamation. And then suddenly we hear from the Fred Haynes civic government that you're looking at a citizens' assembly on Saanich and potential of a referendum. Where did that come from, and what's the reaction been?
Great questions. Great questions. You probably know that previous Mayor Frank Leonard, who was a remarkable mayor for many years, had a ballot question when the idea of total amalgamation of the area was in the air. All 13 municipalities becoming one, or a hybrid, maybe 13 municipalities going to 4. And that was a ballot question, and all the municipalities except Victoria and Saanich said no, they're not interested in amalgamation. Our ballot question was, would you like a conversation about governance relationships with our neighbors? That then morphed in 2018 to a ballot question for a citizens' assembly to discuss our relationships with those cities that are interested in that conversation. We put out a call to all 13 municipalities. It makes sense that those who are on our borders with us would amalgamate. We couldn't amalgamate, for example, with Burnaby, as a crazy example. But Victoria came up.
That's good news. That's good news.
Just in case you're worried.
Yeah.
Just in case you guys were worried. So Victoria said, yes, we'd love to. And as we know, with the chamber, for the last 100 years, it's been an ambition of Victoria to have amalgamation. I just need a drink of water, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. You know, I would touch on that particular point that I remember, John, when they had a guy named Patrick Dunn come and speak to assembled members of the chamber, a lot of ex-chamber chairs. And Patrick Dunn had been the president of the Chamber of Commerce in 1956, which was the year I was born. And we asked Patrick Dunn, who I think at the time was about 93 years old. He's now sadly passed away, but he was as sharp as a tack. He's at the front of the room. And somebody asked him, what was the *1 issue for the Chamber of Commerce in 1956? And he looked at us and he said, well, of course, it was amalgamation.
That's right.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I'm not 100 years old yet, Fred, but I mean, it has been going on for an awful long time.
It has. You know, when in my first month of being elected, the first few months, the chamber had their AGM, and Mayor Helps and I were there. And Catherine Holt, who's the most remarkable woman and was the chair of the chamber, as you know, executive director for the chamber. And I teased her by calling her the diva of amalgamation, because that is the script of the chamber. The question, Robin, is it just about commerce, or is it about quality of life? And I think that's the decision the residents of Saanich will be looking at, and the residents of Victoria through this process. When we look at this area, people say, well, you wouldn't normally design an area like this with this, 250,000 residents just under 460,000 in 13 municipalities. You'd be one municipality. And then look around the country at those larger municipalities and say, is the quality of life better? 1 second, my dog wants to go out.
That's great.
You know, I love the appearing and reappearing Fred Haynes. You know, you don't get every mayor doing that, but there's a comfort level on this show, Johnny, where anything goes.
Yeah, I know. It's
we
live.
encourage
It's
dog
real.
ownership. People
It's
need
real.
to get water, need to take a bathroom
Exactly.
break during the program. It's no problem with us.
So
John, you
Fred,
have another question?
so
But
you
no,
know,
no screenshots if I'm coming back from jogging, right?
all right, on this issue of amalgamation, and we won't, you know, sort of beat this down to a pulp for the next 100 years. It almost seems to be happening organically. I think the West Shore
Well done.
is starting to speak as a single voice in terms of what they all collectively want. And I think the peninsula and the 3 municipalities are starting to speak that way as well. And so then we have Saanich, which is still the largest municipality, and Victoria, whom, as much as I want to rumble with anybody, I don't want to talk about Victoria. I just don't, as a resident of Saanich, do not become Victoria, Fred. And so, you know, so that's how I would vote. So, you know, we're already into 3 or 4 regions by default.
So what you're saying there is that we have these regional collectives of a certain way of approaching our lives, the quality of life in them. And if we look at North Saanich, Central Saanich, Sydney, the Highlands, into Saanich, we have a certain approach. When you look at the downtown core, they have a different approach. I will say this. This term, within weeks of being elected, the mayors of the peninsula, we joined together in a child daycare study. We applied to UBCM $150,000 to do a regional study of daycare needs. Exactly on the point you're making, John, that we are in clusters. We know that the movement of people between our municipalities for jobs, for retail, for commerce, going to school, going to daycare, we operate almost already as sort of 3 or 4 unique areas.
Yeah.
But when we talk to South Island Prosperity Project about the total movement of people, it is across the region.
Yes.
But you know, you talk about regional, and you could also, I guess, talk about regional homelessness and how a lot of that is concentrated now in Victoria Parks. But some of these people are arriving from different parts of the city and certainly different parts of the province as well. So, and country. But I know that there's going to be a big movement and a big focus at the end of April, beginning of May, to see people out of parks, into shelters, into rooming and housing provided by the province, and a lot of focus on Victoria and Victoria's role in doing something about this. But Saanich is right next door. What steps are you taking to help the homeless that are maybe originally from Saanich?
Well, great question. And I think it's one of the most moving situations we're dealing with, the hard to house or people without housing. Saanich has stepped up over decades, as you know, and of all the municipalities in the region, we have more supported housing, more affordable housing, bar none. In fact, some 8% of all the housing in Saanich is supported and affordable, has affordable structures around it, whether it's being run by not-for-profits, like the Victoria Housing Society, the CRD, faith-based groups, the diocese, etc. What we've done in this space is we put forward a property. Actually, BC Housing acquired Albina, which was a pre-approved application for housing for 50 seniors rental places. So the role of the municipality to approve that development was already done. BC Housing, responding to the federal call and budget for shovel in the ground ready projects, acquired that, worked with the province, and both the province and the federal government monies are now enabling that under paramountcy. Paramountcy is a term that some people will know, others not, where the province basically says, municipalities, step to the side, we're doing this because of the crisis that's in place. And the crisis they're addressing now is homelessness. It will be 52 units, 24 wraparound care, secure lockdown, so there's no overnight guest. What we said to BC Housing and the province and the federal government, that we are interested in this being a demonstration model of the highest and best possible solutions to those who are currently living in tents in parks. The proof is going to be in the pudding. There are concerns in the neighborhood. I'm talking to residents almost daily that have concerns. BC Housing has yet to appoint the operator, yet to come out with the full information package. And what we've seen from the municipal side is given us quite a bit of confidence that they're taking this seriously. One of the worries in any neighborhood is what's going to happen with this intake of people that have been homeless for mental health, brain injury, drug addiction, and are
Crime.
and crime and in need of care. What we have had on the crime piece is to make this as free of predatory behavior, because the crime comes in for selling drugs, the crime comes in on sexual exploitation, and the crime comes in for exploitation of all kinds and of the full spectrum of criminality.
Yeah.
It may be inducing people to go and steal something so they can buy your product. So we're talking about a free and safe drug supply. We're talking about housing, and we're taking this exceedingly seriously, although under paramountcy, the actual levers of the municipality are zero.
You know, we could literally spend hours rumbling on this issue. I happen to think Saanich has done a good job, but we'll see what happens when the parks start closing in Victoria. But let's start rumbling a little bit about economic development.
Well, just let me finish on that. Saanich is very clear with our park bylaw. Mayor is clear, that's me. Council is clear. Our departments are clear. You can sleep overnight, but then you cannot stay during the day.
Right.
That will continue in Saanich.
Okay.
So I think you were hinting there that maybe there'll be a migration, but it would not sit within our bylaws.
Okay, good news. Let's rumble about economic development for a moment, like we haven't already. I mean, clearly a casino is economic development of the highest order. Nonetheless, you and I, Fred, have talked over time about homing, sitting, finding a place for film industry activity.
Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on.
And that's sort of by nuance and by rumor has moved around over the last 10 years and never settled anywhere, you know, and there seems to be a bit more concrete potential for it to settle somewhere in Saanich. Give us a sense of where we're at and what
I'll talk about the movie studio, and I'm delighted to. As you know, you're absolutely right. For a decade, 15 years, almost 2 decades, people have talked about it. Meanwhile, on the mainland, we've seen, nearly a $4 billion industry, some 100 studios come out of nowhere, all of them successful. And when I was a councillor, I was interested in this, and I started to campaign on it and built it into my mayoral campaign. That included trips to the mainland. We visited one studio run by Mr. John Liu, and he built 2 studios and a production center. And since the day he built them 25 years ago, they've been rented out. And he did that just as an individual. We went to the Bridge Street studios, 3,000 people there, average salary $100,000. Whether it's doing wardrobe, hairdressing, the ancillary services behind the camera. It's an amazing green industry. Yeah. Why haven't we succeeded in lifting the dial here? This last year, $50 million in movie income during COVID. Thank you, Catherine Gilbert of the Victoria Film Commission. That's a doubling from previous. Times by 5, as you know, John, that's $250 million of economic benefits. The hotels were getting rented out, the restaurants were being used, etc. So the economic stimulus is considerable. Yeah. What we identified in looking around the territories is the sweetest spot is Camosun campus.
The one on interurban.
You probably heard there's $150,000 now available from the province, from the current government of the province, who committed to this in their election. And I said to anybody, stand up and support the studio. I'll be there as the mayor of Saanich beside you. For economic development, it's huge. We think 3 sound stages, plus a production center, plus an academic setting where students can be trained into the industry. And what we've heard from AYATSU, the union, is that anyone who comes through an accredited course at Camosun would receive what they call certification, so they work in the industry. You might know that my youngest brother, Matthew, works in Hollywood.
No.
Yeah. And he won an Emmy for the Veep.
Oh, no kidding. Until it couldn't outdo the reality.
So he'd be the outgoing member of the Haynes family. Is that right?
So a think tank of Camosun College, Kathleen Gilbert, Michael Goodwin, and others have been around this project. We think it's viable. There are many others, you know, I could mention them, they're up island, but the question is, who's going to get out the gate first? Who's got the reality on the ground? Who has the best program opportunity for location? And it's Saanich.
Well, Fred, I think we do in Saanich, but down the road is a municipality that will take any initiative, any economic development, throw it on any mountain that resides within their community, and Langford will steal it.
They'll try to. Stu's an amazing mayor and a remarkable individual, and I got huge respect for him. But in this case, he's going to lose out.
Yay, rumble, attaboy.
So looking in a crystal ball, Fred, how soon would we really know concretely what's going to happen with the film school at Interurban Campus? Do you think it's going to happen in this next year?
September. The contract is being let for somebody to do what we call this accelerated business plan. Mm-hmm. And what that would do would be scope out design concepts, talk to the neighborhood, talk to significant players in the movie industry, and come up with a expression of interest document, requesting proposals for the private sector to come in and either in one fell swoop or stage it through Studio One, Soundstage 1, Soundstage 2, Soundstage 3 in a progression. The land is owned by the province. There'd have to be a 35-year lease with a rolling renewal mechanism, so it goes in perpetuity. But come September, we should have some real news for you, and I'm hoping that we can break ground before the end of the year.
Robin and I will promise to do a brackets, Saanich Rumble Room in the new facility, and that should tilt it in our favor.
Yeah,
totally. But the other piece for economic development is we just approved a budget for a standalone Saanich Economic Development Officer. This is the third leg of the stool. You might remember when I was chair of Planning, Transportation and Economic Development, when you came to present, you came to one of our meetings. We do need a stronger, more robust focus on economic development in Saanich to complement the work being done at South Island Prosperity Partners. And to complement the work being done by Paul Nursey of Tourism and Sports Victoria.
The Sport Tourism Commission, correct. Wow.
That's right. So
that's fantastic news, Fred. Well, you've done an awful lot. I mean, and we're gonna sadly have to wrap this in a moment. I know John really wanted to talk a lot more about the food trucks that are coming to Saanich Parks this summer. He's pretty excited about that. He's already lined up. So we're going to give you, Fred, the final word on where you've taken Saanich during your term as mayor. I realize you still got about another year and a half before we get to the next election, and where you hope to be at the end of it. It seems to me that even during a pandemic, when there's so much bad news, that somehow Saanich is recovering from this in a way where you're moving forward in a very rapid and positive way. So perhaps you could just touch on what your thoughts and aspirations are for this next year ahead.
Thank you. One of the biggest areas we're working on is housing, to make our systems more efficient, to reduce the 27-30 month of timelines from an application to the approval. So that's a big piece of work we're doing. We engaged in the Saanich Housing Task Force. We had the provincially mandated housing needs assessment done, identifying that we are shortfalling on the number of housing units we're bringing forward across the full range of diverse housing, from supported housing right up to marketplace condos and single family. That work is underway. We should get some real traction on that within the next few months. Economic development, as we've mentioned, respecting the green spaces in Saanich. We just moved the Panama Flats to be protected as a wildlife and green space. It was slated for agricultural land reserve to be farming. That was a yesterday story. We realized it's more important as wetland. My dog.
That's super.
The other is First Nations and reconciliation is very important. We're working in that space. We brought forward a recognition of all diversity, the importance of all diversity in Saanich, working with people of all creeds, races and colors, LGBTQ, BIPOC. I'm chair of the police board. We have a remarkable new leadership team in the police department, and we'll be working to bring out some of the great stories there, where our police department was able to deliver 6 new positions and a new deputy chief position, all within the existing budget, by looking at doing more with the same, better with the same. It's the same approach to running a business. You've got to be more efficient with the same to compete in very competitive markets. We're using the same tools inside Saanich. We've got a lot of things going on with the active transportation. In addition to the 30K, we're accelerating our bike paths and sidewalks. We've spent an extra $2.7 million to accelerate our climate action plan on top of the already accelerated program we have, where we're trying to get things done by 2030. On resilient Saanich, which is the environmentally sensitive spaces, which used to be under what we call the EDPA, Environmental Development Permit Area, we have now embraced the idea that all Saanich lands, our parks, need to be treated in the same way of private residents, so that we can get at the total biodiversity of Saanich. We're trying to lead in a one planet model, which is to have forums where individuals can reduce their carbon and global impact footprint. I'm hoping that through these things, we can deliver a Saanich that is more respectful to the individual, has more housing available, and has a much more resilient environment to hand on to the next term.
That's great, Fred Haynes. What a great guest on the Rumble Room today. And Saanich certainly showing a lot of ambition, John.
Very proud to be a Saanich citizen. As proud as I am to be a Lower Vancouver Island citizen. Well done, Fred.
Way to go. And we're going to have another mayor on the show next week, a former mayor. That's going to be Alan Lowe, who today is the president of the Victoria Chinatown Museum Society, to talk about a new museum that's going into Fantan Alley this summer. And it's exciting that the Chinese community is stepping forward in Victoria with this new place where we can hear about their long history, over 150 years on the South Island.
Yeah, I can't wait to do that interview and to post that Rumble Room session. This is such an important issue, celebrating the many, many facets of our community, and to help us along and to get the word out, and of course to promote Robin and John Knott. Please consider liking our Facebook page at Victoria Rumble Room, and sharing it amongst your network with these fabulous sessions. They're getting better by the week, Robin. And of course on Twitter at Victoria Rumble Room 1. And all of these huge mega files sit on our YouTube site. They're all inventoried there, which is Victoria Rumble Room with Robin and John. Way too much fun covering these issues. Thank you, Robin. My name is John Juricic.
And I'm Robin Adair, and rumble on.